It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's time for WWT Live. And today it is time to break out. We're going to talk about how women literally dominated all things NXT last night and what that means for the rest of the pro wrestling landscape. Family, this is WWT Live.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Time to load it up on a Wednesday. What's going on, family? My name's Gerard Bonner. They call me the professor around these parts. Welcome to Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. And this, of course, is WWT Live. We bring it to you every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where we're talking about all things in the world of pro wrestling. And, of course, we've got a heavy emphasis on all things women's wrestling. And, boy, is there a lot to cover. A lot's happened in the last 24 to 48 hours, really around women's wrestling as well. So we're going to get into all of that. Of course, I am not alone. I have got the man with the plan. He likes cakes, pies, pastries, and all other related things. He is the EST of WWT. He is Cedric. How are you, sir?
I am great. It's Wednesday. We're getting through the week here. We're getting through the week.
We are.
Long week, but we're getting there.
And
happy spooky season for all who celebrate too. I mean, I feel like I'm going against everything I stand for. I haven't watched one horror movie yet, and it's already 4 days in. I got to correct that today.
Well, are you a horror guy?
Yeah, big one.
Okay. Nice. Good deal. So, do you have a favorite horror situation or?
So I'm very excited to see the new Saw, and I get people who might not like that they've made so many, but it's just it's creative. I like it how creative all the little games are, stuff like that. So like Saw is probably one of my favorites.
Okay, awesome. Well, shout out to our family in the chat. Bobby, good to see you. Welcome aboard, Quincy. Good to have you here. And Dylan. Yeah. I just think it's so cool that again we get to be international, and so we get to start the day for Dylan. For other parts of the world, we are midday or evening or what have you. This is the beauty of being connected all around the world, and there's a lot. I mean, a lot to talk about. Let's start at NXT, and we're going to kind of work our way into the one contender for the NXT Women's Championship. Seb, would you like to talk about that?
I'm still digesting this because we talked about maybe a week ago when we dropped that Becky had some more NXT dates that she was filling up. Right. But Becky starts the show last night, and of course, you get people interrupting her. She got interrupted by Lyra Valkyria, Indy Hartwell, and then Roxanne Perez. And now we have a triple threat for a new #1 contender. Meanwhile, she hasn't even faced the other #1 contender, which is Tegan Nox. And we know that happened due to injury. She had a nasty laceration in her arm. I don't even think it'll honestly be healed by this upcoming Monday. It was pretty deep. I feel like that takes time, but it seems like Becky's going to do the work with Tegan Nox on Monday. And now Lyra Valkyria getting a chance against Becky Lynch gets to go to the big time. Very interesting choice. I know Monday night, Indy Hartwell made her appearance and built a pretty strong case saying that she had to relinquish the title due to injury. I thought they would have went that direction. Obviously, Roxanne is there as well because she's a former champion. But in the match, you see Kiana James pretty much eliminating her. And we're going to talk about Roxanne's path because it leads to a very big Tuesday night next week. But Lyra Valkyria is your new NXT Women's #1 contender for the women's title and Becky Lynch. So seems like Lyra is always in the right place at the right time. She's like right on the cusp.
Yeah. It's kind of fun to see all that's been happening for Lyra Valkyria, who again kind of came in under the radar in that transition from NXT UK to NXT and has just been super consistent, steady Eddie. And before you know it, she finds herself in matches with Rhea Ripley. And now she's the #1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship. And it's super cool because we're looking at the idea that, and we haven't dug into this. You talked about spooky season, Halloween Havoc, which is an NXT staple now, is now becoming a 2-night event, and they both appear to be live nights. And it is on night 1 that we're going to see this NXT Women's Championship match with Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria. So there is a pipeline for Becky Lynch, which I think is wild to see. Of course, Tegan Nox, this match has yet to happen. And now we're already looking at Lyra Valkyria. Crazy night in the space of NXT. And of course, the people are talking, and we're going to get into this part, Dylan, about really, because we've got to dig into NXT because there was a lot that happened on NXT last night. Bobby says it was great to see a triple threat match. And certainly that triple threat match was stacked. I mean, any of those 3 women could have walked out as a number 1 contender.
Yeah, you can literally make a case for anyone. That's what was cool.
That's what we like about NXT. Like, we literally got pay-per-view quality matches last night. And that's why, there are those that are saying that where we are right now feels like we're returning to that black and gold era, which is funny. So Boza says, it's funny that they're promoting Becky versus Lyra for Halloween Havoc. Are they assuming Becky will survive Tegan Nox on Monday night? Well, those are all assumptions. And it's interesting because as we know, and as we will get to in NXT, anything can happen and plans can change and what can be promoted can be changed. We saw that with No Mercy over the weekend, and we'll get into all of that for sure. Now, Dylan makes a very interesting point, saying that something tells me Tegan is going to turn heel after last night. She did not look happy. She didn't look happy, and I can, there's a case that could be made for Tegan Nox turning heel. Remember, both of these title matches that she was supposed to have, she was knocked out of through no fault of her own. And now when you start looking at other opponents potentially, it's almost like, yeah, this is happening. And it's literally like Becky said, it's a world tour with the intent of making all of these stops with the assumption that we're having successful title defenses in all of these stops. It's pretty crazy.
And there's something strange, or not strange, there's something afoot going on with Tegan and Natalia, with her.
Yes.
Natalia's recent about face and trying to butter up Tegan Nox. So maybe something comes about there. I was thinking more along the lines that we're not going to get a finish between Tegan and Becky, and then Tegan gets added to the match, because they always do Halloween Havoc very big. And I'll be surprised if there's not like some Halloween themed match. I remember when Shotzi was the host. Right. I remember the Dexter Loomis match. I think that was against Grayson Waller.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they normally have a lot of different Halloween themed events to kind of really boost the card.
So some interesting moments happening again. Lyra Valkyria is your new NXT Women's Championship #1 contender, which I think is also interesting, calling her the #1 contender with Tegan Nox literally next week. That's kind of wild. But with that said, more women's action happening last night as we finally got the start of the NXT Women's Breakout Tournament. We started talking, I think, on Monday, because on Monday we actually got the names over the weekend of who would be involved, but we now know the brackets. And for those who are watching, you see them there. But for those who are listening, the right-hand side of the bracket features Carmen Petrovic, who's a newcomer, against Jada Parker, who is also a newcomer. And then I think this is going to be a very interesting match. Danny Palmer and Lola Vice. On the left-hand side, from the bottom, you've got Ariana Grace making her return against Metaphor's Jakara Jackson. And then the opening match took place last night with Kalani Jordan and Izzy Dame. Said, let me get your thoughts, first of all, on the 8 women that are in the breakout tournament. And then afterwards, I'd love to get your thoughts on the opening match from last night.
I think it's a good way to feature a lot of women that we're not really familiar with on an in-ring basis. Maybe some people have competed on Level Up, but as far as NXT on Tuesday nights, not so much. But one thing I take from this, and what I like, is now that you're kind of getting, only way I can describe this is the Matt Facts from Matt Hardy's 2.0 era, where you're getting like little clip shots of like what they used to do. We know Kalani Jordan is a former Division I gymnast. Izzy Dame used to play volleyball. Lola Vice, she's in MMA. I think Danny Palmer is also a former gymnast as well. So we'll be able to know these facts to figure out where they came from in authority to wrestling. By the way, Becky Lynch threw a little bit of shade last night. If anybody caught it, she said she loves wrestling these women because they love the business and they came up in the business, not from other sports. I don't know if you guys caught that.
I did catch that.
She did say that. So maybe a little shade to people who the pipeline of, hey, let's pick this athlete and make him a wrestler. I don't know. Maybe there's a storyline there. But we got to see Kalani Jordan versus Izzy Dame. And I don't think there's anybody on a hotter streak than Kalani Jordan. I think she's picking up like right where Sol Ruka was as far as like the spotlight, getting the high spots, getting wins. So as far as if I had to pick in a fantasy world, because I feel like we're on a crash course of Jakara versus Kalani. And I feel like Kalani has next. I feel like whatever they're doing with Kalani, they have to continue doing it. So I will fantasy pick that upper right corner is a mystery, honestly.
It is.
I don't know either one. Like we don't know who's going to get the push out of that one. But I'll stick with my winner pick, which was Lola Vice. So I think Lola and Kalani will be in the finals.
Yeah, I actually would mirror that in terms of the finals. I think Kalani and Jakara are going to give us a really great match in the semifinals. Jakara, certainly watching her on Level Up before we got Metaphor, it was fun watching her, really start to develop and the like. Of course, her social media has been killing, but I think this association with Metaphor automatically puts her in a different tier at this point, even though we haven't seen much of her in the ring since being part of Metaphor. So I think that's going to be interesting. And, it could work out where Jakara gets past Kalani, but I do think Kalani's getting the push. I do think Lola's going to win the Breakout tournament. I think she's the favorite to win it, but I do like that upper right-hand corner. The idea of not knowing either of these two women gives us a chance to actually learn about some new talent in the women's division for the Breakout tournament. Now, I wanted to go back because I think it's important, as we're talking about the Breakout tournament, to see, does this tournament actually do what they're saying it'll do? They're talking about the Breakout tournament being the opportunity to create new stars, elevate someone's career. So here are the 8 competitors that were in last year's Breakout tournament. And so much has happened in WWE and in NXT that it may make you feel like, was there even a Breakout tournament last year? There actually was. It happened in May of last year. And here were the participants. Nikita Lyons, who interestingly enough got injured going into that tournament. Roxanne Perez, who won the whole thing. Tatum Paxley, Fallon Henley, Lash Legend, Sloane Jacobs, Kiana James, and Ariana Grace. And what ended
Grace
up
injured as well.
Say that again?
I think Grace got injured as well.
She did. Now, here's what's interesting. Nikita Lyons was an original member of that Breakout tournament. She got injured and was replaced by Tiffany Stratton. The finals were Tiffany Stratton and Roxanne Perez. And here we are a year later. We've seen the trajectory of both of these young women. And of the 8 women in here, we've certainly seen several of them with regular TV time in regular spots in NXT over the last year, with Fallon Henley and her moment with the tag champions, first of all being the men's tag champions, and then herself being a tag team champion as well with Kiana James, who was in there as well. Lash Legend, who certainly had a rough start, I think it's safe to say, but found her way in Metaphor. So she's done well. Again, Roxanne Perez. Tatum Paxley has had some TV time as well.
Actually, was a part of Diamond Mine at one point.
Yes, she was. Ariana Grace got injured, and Sloane Jacobs is really the only of the 8 that we haven't seen much. So with that said, the Breakout tournament does what it says it's going to do.
So Ivy Nile wasn't in the last Breakout tournament?
She was not.
Really? I find that so hard to believe.
Yeah. So I to me, going back and looking at these names that were in this tournament speaks volumes, and seeing the finalists, of course, being Lash Legend, I'm sorry, Roxanne Perez and Tiffany Stratton, and seeing where they are now. Tiffany obviously just main eventing No Mercy. We've seen the championship run for Roxanne Perez, and obviously Roxanne was in the #1 contenders match last night. So this does what it says it's going to do. All the more reason why this is such a big opportunity for the 8 women that are involved. And again, kudos to them. And it just also shows us that there are still people in the Performance Center, in the pipeline, waiting to come through. And I think that that's pretty awesome.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. You can see, just looking at the last tournament, you can see the fingerprints of that tournament throughout the roster. Everybody had something new. Everybody had storylines. Even like if you look at the NXT 2.0 days, Lash Legend had her own talk show at a point. She was getting regular TV time.
That's right.
So I think for these characters right here, you'll see them, especially somebody like Ariana Grace, who they probably had plans for before she got injured. Right. We'll start seeing these people on NXT television more. And that's really the beauty of NXT, is that it makes sense.
Yes.
Like, people get time every other week. Storylines develop. They have a beginning, middle, and end. It all makes sense. It's all done for a reason. There's no like fly-by-night stuff. There's nobody pulled out anonymously. All these people get to showcase their character. And I think that's the beauty of NXT's writers. That's the beauty of like tournaments like the Breakout tournament.
Right, right. It is a wonderful, wonderful situation. So again, shout out to everybody involved in the women's Breakout tournament. And I'm excited to see that. Now, there are obviously lots of comments happening regarding this tournament as well. Let's see. Bobby is picking Ariana Grace to win the Breakout tournament, which I think is a cool choice. Jakara and Kalani being on the same side is a missed opportunity, according to Dylan, and that's who he would have in the finals. I think that would be a very interesting final, actually. Jakara versus Kalani, for sure. Boza has 2 thoughts for the finals, one being Kalani versus Lola, or Ariana Grace versus Danny Palmer. In scenario 1, Lola Vice wins. In scenario 2, Ariana Grace wins. So we'll see. I think we had the same pick in terms of Kalani versus Lola. Potentially,
I think Lola would love to face her friend Jakara.
I think for sure. I think that'd be dope. So let's see. Dylan says Ariana isn't getting past the first round. Jakara is in the hottest faction in NXT right now, and one of the hottest in all of WWE.
If you heard Booker T on commentary last night during the tag match between Elektra
and Lola,
JC Jane. JC Jane was cooking, by the way.
Yes, she was.
Booker T was really hyping up Lola Vice on commentary in that match.
Yes, he was.
Like, and if you look at like the way commentators start to lean towards certain characters, it sounded like the same way Booker T will hype up Trick Williams maybe a month or 2 ago. Like, really saying positive things about her as a character and saying, like, I think she has something there.
Yeah. There is something there. And it's probably an interesting point to talk about, which we're going to get into that in just a second. But again, there was a lot.
What you just said. I'm actually very interested in your thoughts about that.
Let me go back and take a look at what he just
said.
He's
very much saying that.
Let's just see.
What are your thoughts about the crowd booing Roxanne Perez?
Okay, yeah, let me go to that. I'm wondering if we'll get matches on Level Up in this tournament. Don't see how they can fit tournament matches next week when they're throwing everything. All right, well, I don't think the tournament is designed to be over next week, and they only gave us 1 match in the tournament this week. So I think they're going to ride this tournament out for a little while. We may not necessarily get to Level Up. And I actually think holding parts of this tournament on Level Up could defeat the purpose, because I think the purpose of the Breakout is for them to end up on NXT television. Right. Let's see. So this comment, that crowd will cheer for Lola for sure. Roxanne has been getting booed since she beat Lola a few weeks ago. You know, it's interesting. Roxanne has actually had a bit of an edge to her for the last couple of months. You know, going back to the war she had with Blair Davenport, when she kind of had that, I guess it was an anything goes match or last woman standing, one of those. I can't remember exactly what kind of match it was, but she's had this edge to her where she's starting fights in the locker room, and you cross her, she's going to have some choice words. I think this could be a precursor to, Roxanne making some sort of turn. I also wonder if her not winning last night will help contribute to how she's feeling about, do I want to still rock with this and or hop over to the dark side? Makes me wonder for sure. Let's see. Would love to see WWE explore Roxanne as a heel. I think that would be very interesting. Has she ever been a heel? I don't think she has.
I don't think so either. It might behoove her character and like save her a little bit, because I feel like the crowd and we know the audience down there is very fickle for a lot of stuff, but I feel like the crowd is starting to turn on her because she doesn't quite feel like an underdog anymore. Meaning that the opportunities are always given, or she's always in the picture somehow.
Right.
And she really skyrocketed fast.
She did.
And once you turn around from that and you're still there, for lack of better words, it starts to feel very Charlotte-like. So maybe a heel turn or the secondary storyline with Blair Davenport was cool. Maybe you just need more of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's almost, and I don't know if it's fair to make this comparison, but it's almost the Braun Breaker effect, how both rose to stardom fairly quickly. And I think the difference here is Braun held that title for a while. Roxanne did not hold the title long at all. And from there, not only did she not regain the title, but she's gotten a lot of championship opportunities since then, always hovering around the title picture. And I don't know if everybody always wants to see that. Dylan makes an interesting point. She's not moved at all. I like her, but she hasn't progressed. And I think that's just it, particularly as NXT has morphed from 2.0 back to NXT. The real question is, people want to see your progression. I think people are very clear that while NXT, whether you call it a third brand or not, the idea isn't to stay in NXT for life. The idea is to be able to be seen on Raw or SmackDown and to develop enough so that people go, yeah, we want to see this, or nah, I'm really good. I could do without this. You know what I mean? And to that point, I do think that Florida crowd is extremely influential one way or the other. It's almost like having your own personal oh gosh, it just left me that fast. Exactly how I wanted to say that. But it's like having almost taste testers, who are live, who are completely unbiased, because of the size of that venue. You can't kind of sway the way they're going to react and respond to things. Things will either hit or they'll miss, and they'll let you know. And so I think it's very interesting when you get that kind of, real and raw reaction. It's the kind of thing I think that made them, really skyrocket Trick Williams, because they were chanting for Trick before he had this great theme song. They were making up their own songs for Trick Williams in the crowd. I mean, it was pretty awesome to see. So I'm intrigued to see if they will follow the lead of this crowd relative to Roxanne and decide to turn her. Boza says, I agree with Gerard. Both Braun and Roxanne got success quickly. Fans of the PC hate how they didn't earn it. I can get with that. Roxanne has done everything there is to do in NXT. She should be on the main roster sooner rather than later. Her next week is so random. Well, not necessarily random, Boza. And I'll explain.
That is not Connor. That is Oscar.
Yeah, and yeah, then there's that. So let's talk about one of the other things that happened last night at NXT, and that is the main event, which saw the NXT North American title rematch between Trick Williams and Dominic Mysterio. And well, in case you don't know, that's how we ended NXT last night. Dominic Mysterio is now the two-time North American champion. The look on the crowd for a lot of people resembles the face of Finn Balor, as you can see there. And for those who can't see, it's a look of shock and awe. Everyone's shocked. Dominic Mysterio, once again, the North American champion. All right, we
Joins
got
an
to talk
illustrious
about
list
this.
of 2-time champions too.
Yeah, a very short list of 2-time champions. So let's have this conversation. What do we make of Dominic Mysterio regaining the North American Championship literally 3 days after losing that title at No Mercy? No Mercy.
So now Trick Williams is the shortest North American champion in history. And I feel
Correct.
like this is less of an indictment on Trick Williams and more of a resounding investment into the Judgment Day. We know that they are running Monday Night Raw. We know they can appear on both brands as being Universal Tag Team Champions now. I feel like this shows how much of an investment the company has in the Judgment Day as a whole and what's next to come. Keep in mind, Trick Williams was not the plan for
Correct.
No Mercy. That was a pivot and I think him winning the title is still a good thing, even though it's a short run. It kind of shows like, hey, we see you in this light so much, we want to put a belt on you.
Right.
But they also have to acknowledge that wasn't the plan. I think it already came out that Ali was actually supposed to go over Dom. So maybe this was the same thing that was going to happen. Dom loses on his own. Judgment Day comes in and, they swarm you. And that can also play a factor into why Trick Williams declined Carmelo Hayes' assistance and help, because in Ali's situation, he wouldn't have any friends as well. So I just look at the parallels with that and I say, this could have been the plan all along. And maybe if it was Mustafa, they could have probably changed plans that day and had Dom retain too. So I think this says more about the Judgment Day as a faction and the heights that they're on right now, and them wanting to keep the gold in all the group. And maybe they'll. Fastlane is Saturday.
It is.
Universal Tag Champs are taking on Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes.
They are.
Who both, Jey and Cody, have not been pinned clean all that often. If you look at it that way, this could be another way just to keep more gold in Judgment Day, because those titles might get lost. I don't know. I think it has to do more with the workings of Judgment Day than saying like, hey, we don't view Trick as a champion. I don't want anybody in the comments and the chat to think that. I think we've seen Trick at his heights, and whatever's going on between him and Melo, they're going to continue to allow that to stir and cook. And now you get to see Trick kind of on the main event level.
Yeah. I'm reminded of this, for the people who know and love Bryan Danielson's run in WWE as Daniel Bryan, most remember his either 18-second title loss at WrestleMania, but most really remember
the Sheamus one?
The Sheamus one. The other one that wow. The other one that most people remember, of course, is his title win in New Orleans at WrestleMania 30 and the road to that. What many people forget is, I believe it was the SummerSlam prior where he won the World Championship and then got cashed in on that same night. So for me,
was that cash in Kane?
No, the cash in I thought was was it Orton?
Triple H, you're right. It was Orton. It was Orton.
Because Triple H was the referee and did some kind of crazy thing, and Orton came in and cashed in. So I say that to say that most people really only remember that big title run for Daniel Bryan. Meaning, I think in the grand scheme of things, most will not say Trick Williams was the shortest champion in North American title history, because I think at the end of the day, he'll get another run. It'll be a great one. I think this one really just showed he had the potential to get there. And now that you've seen him with it, you want to really see him with it again. And I think we now get to see the proverbial chase that everybody talks about.
So carry that chip on his shoulder is going to make him a bigger star now too.
For sure. And then now it's a race to see who's going to get to a belt first, Trick or Melo, which I think, again, makes this story extremely interesting. So with
the way Tuesday night is looking, they might fast track this Trick and Melo to Bobby and the Profits. They might just show up. Who knows? Like
who knows? So there, the chat, for those who are listening, is going crazy. And I need to bring up some of these comments because, they're not necessarily waiting for our agenda. So we're going to get to this particular point, which will probably address some of these comments. But I'll start with a comment and then go to what our next story is. So Boza is asking the question, why is Dominic champion? Feels like there was no plan B. There have been reports that Dom was supposed to lose to Ali. He can't win anything on his own. But I really want to go to this comment that he said. He says this: I thought NXT was supposed to be a place where they find the stars of tomorrow. Yet Dom is the North American champion. Love Becky as the NXT women's champion. And there's a lot of comments that are following after that. So let's start with this big piece of news surrounding NXT. And that big piece of news is the ratings for last night, which I know is one of Boza's absolute favorite subjects. When it comes to the ratings for NXT, do you want to tell the story, said, of how people responded to last night's episode of NXT? And then I've got a bomb to drop.
And man, that's what's crazy. This is before what the hell is about to happen in less than 7 days.
Correct.
But they had their highest ratings since October of 2020. Let's put that into perspective. What was happening in October 2020? Mm-hmm. Shutdowns, lockdowns nationwide, pandemic era. Biggest ratings since then at 857,000 viewers on the USA Network. That is huge.
Massive.
That shows such a massive investment into this third brand. And you can say it's because of Becky, you can say it's because of Judgment Day and rematches, but I like to believe it's because of the stories that are being told. People are invested into the storylines of certain characters. Now, back to that question about the stars of tomorrow. And I slightly disagree. I agree for the stars of tomorrow, but you're helping build the stars of tomorrow by getting them hands-on experience with the stars of today, which in traditional years, you couldn't do that. There was no, hey, Brock Lesnar's going to come wrestle you, kid. There was none of it. So if you have willing vets that are coming to help give live training, it's going to help those stars fast track and elevate even quicker. Now, to Dom's credit, and I love good nepotism. I love great nepotism. I love what Rey Mysterio did for his kid. But a lot of people were clamoring, saying like, hey, Dom needs to go to NXT. Dom needs to get his feet wet. But he got his feet wet on the main roster. And now he's in NXT now. And we're seeing some of Dom's best work. Because he's working with people who were either on the same level or same speed as him. And he looks steps faster. He looks steps above because he got that training on main already. So I think Dom is in a perfect spot. And we're able to see him flesh out as a character. And one thing about him being North American champion that makes sense is he garners a reaction.
Yes.
If you haven't been in a live arena and hear those boos, they're not piped in. They're completely legitimate. And greatest of all time. Cena says it all the time. Be memorable.
Yes.
Dom, whatever he's doing, fans are responding to it. There are people out there that give you 5-star matches that don't get a response. So he has that part about it, and the rest of it will catch up.
So I wanna drop this. 857,000 is a massive number considering NXT normally does, anywhere between 500,000 to 600,000, 650, 660 on a pretty solid night. So I'm going to say this respectfully. I think it's unfair to the work that NXT is doing to try to downplay that number and solely put it on, well, why are they having Dom as champ and why are they having Becky as champ? What a great premium live event is supposed to do is the lead up is supposed to be so great where, obviously the numbers get big leading into it. And then the event is supposed to be so good that you want to see what happens afterwards. We had no knowledge of the card for this NXT show, with the exception of Monday night, Mommy briefly saying, hey, you know what? I got you a title rematch and you better win it. That's the only thing we knew coming into this episode of NXT. And I want to be super clear that they did 857,000 with strong numbers all across the show. And let me also be clear about this. In case you didn't watch NXT last night, there was one overarching theme throughout the whole show last night: women's wrestling. There was so much women's wrestling on NXT last night. And so to make the argument, well, blah, 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 let's talk about the fact that they got one of their biggest ratings in 3 years with a show dominated by women. This is what we have been talking about this entire time. And when I say this entire time, the whole impetus of women's wrestling talk is to see women's wrestling promoted well. We were upset over the weekend about how, on Wrestle Dream, there were 14 matches and there was only one women's match. And we talked in the past about how SummerSlam didn't have great women's representation, and other major premium live events or major shows from AEW didn't have it. Well, here we get, we had Impact 1000, which was bookended by incredible women's matches. And then what we saw last night, I mean, literally every time you turned on the TV on NXT, there was a woman's match or a woman's presence, and it was incredible to see. And then you get the announcement for all that's happening next week, which we're going to get into. I think we got to acknowledge NXT is cooking right now. They are cooking, and it's not dominated by main roster stars. Does Becky Lynch bring certain star power? Yes, she does. But that massive rating came off the heels of an incredible card that had, yes, Becky Lynch in the main event, but there was not a slouch match on that entire card. And if you stayed to watch the whole show, then you caught women's wrestling all the way through. Mm-hmm. You caught some of the best that NXT has to offer. So I think we have to start crediting what NXT is currently doing, because what they're doing is they've worked hard to move out of the 2.0 status into the status that the diehard NXT fans loved. They found a way to merge their plan of having these brand new stars coming out of the PC, merged with some experienced stars, and build new stars in the process. They've managed to do all of that and still keep us watching. That's a win. That's a major, major win. So let's talk about why next week's show is looking as stacked as it is, because this, I think, is going to be significant. If you watched NXT last night, you saw everything from the talk of John Cena appearing, to Cody Rhodes showing up to make an announcement, to Asuka in a match against Roxanne Perez, Paul Heyman in the corner of Braun Breaker versus Mello, a rematch of Stand and Deliver. It's an absolutely massive card. And in case you're wondering why, would you like to tell the people why NXT is going to be so star-studded next week?
We love a good petty chess move. We love a good petty chess move. And it took me a while to figure out, because I was getting notifications. I was following along NXT on Twitter because I was at the gym, and I'm like, what, why? Like, right. And I asked a good friend of the show, Flow of Voice, and I was like, hey, is Dynamite on Tuesday because of the MLB playoffs? Because he's a baseball guy. He's like, yeah, that's exactly why. So AEW Dynamite is going to move from Wednesday to Tuesday next week. And the big thing for next week is Adam Copeland will be taking on Luchasaurus. So you got Adam Copeland debuting at Wrestle Dream, had his theme music, a very cool moment to see that transition. But he's going to take on Luchasaurus. So you're going to see him on actual AEW programming, not on a Wednesday night, on a Tuesday night. What WWE said was, oh, we're in the Wednesday Night Wars again. You want to come on my block, on my show, we're going to call in the big guns. We don't got just Becky. And you know how it's big guns? And I know people think like John Cena's a big deal. John Cena going down to Florida, NXT is a very huge deal. But they freaking called Cody.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes, Cody's the guy right now. He's the ordained next up. They said, we're going to bring Cody NXT. If anything, the NXT audience is going to get to say, whoa.
Yeah.
And for Kingdom. For if anything, for whatever announcement, my speculation is that he comes out and he announces Brian Pillman Jr. as a part of the NXT roster. But like just calling in Cody just for like what 5-10 minutes of TV time is nuts.
Right.
Think about how much they're squeezing it. It's not really 2 hours here. We're saying like hour 45. Think of how much they're squeezing in, how much star power they're squeezing into that time just to say, hey, we're going to shit on you. They're not even going to watch your show. They're going to be here because they're going to want to know what we're doing. That's insane.
It's going to be pretty crazy, and AEW has already dubbed it as Title Tuesday. So I believe Soraya is on that card as well, defending the AEW Women's Championship against Hikaru Shida. It's going to be a one night only Wednesday Night War reunion of sorts happening on Tuesday nights, and so WWE is stacking it, and I think it's going to be cool. So let's see. There's a lot of chatter in the chat. Bobby's looking forward to Roxanne versus Asuka. I think that match is going to be crazy. I think that match is going to be absolutely nuts.
It's like, I feel like Asuka, it's like such a weird place for Asuka, though. I feel like, not that she's beneath it. It's just like, why did you pick Asuka?
It's home. It's home. Now, I didn't know how Kiana would get in touch with an Asuka unless the price is right, but go figure. Boza thinks that Cody's going to announce the Dusty Cup. Bobby
That's a really good prediction, actually.
That is a good prediction. Bobby thinks he'll announce Jade Cargill. I'll say this. So since we mentioned Jade, I am now officially convinced that we're likely not going to see Jade in NXT. And I think my reason why, now let me think this through.
She did say that she was like fishing out her next victim or first victim on Twitter.
Right. Now, here's why I think this, because NXT, when the news broke last Tuesday, NXT did not address it at all. Instead, SmackDown addressed it on Friday. Raw addressed it this past Monday night. There was no mention of it on No Mercy. And so there's a part of me that wonders if NXT is strategically not talking about it because there won't be an expectation for Jade to show up. Some of us thought she might show up in the Breakout tournament, though the coverage that they gave Jade would mean her star was already too big for the Breakout tournament. So I'm starting to dismiss the idea that Jade will show up in NXT, at least as a regular part of that. Just based on the way, again, if Michael Cole is announcing you're likely not starting in NXT. But let's see. Dylan says Dusty Cup, Jade, and Pillman Jr. Okay, well, that could be interesting. And it'll be an interesting, here we go. It'll be an interesting as a fan to watch, and interesting to see how YouTube channels that cover both shows to see how they cover it. So Jeffrey thinks that we'll see Jade on Raw. Dylan thinks that Jade will be at Fastlane. Both of those,
a pretty big card for Fastlane announced so far. Maybe like 3 matches that I know of.
Yeah, just a few matches that I can think of off the top. I know we've got a world title match with Seth and Shinsuke.
The tag title match, the women's title match,
and then we've got the match with LA Knight and John Cena against the Bloodline. So that's 4. There's another one too. There's the Bobby and the Street Profits against the LWO. That's 5. So if we've got 5, we're close to a card because, these days they're letting things cook. They don't necessarily need 8 or 9 matches for sure. So it should be a lot of fun. So yeah, NXT, I got to give it to them. They are cooking. They are cooking really, really well. And so here's another interesting thing that's out there. There is talk that soon and very soon we're going to see Kairi Sane. Many have been hearing through the grapevine, of course, that she is signed to WWE, but the word on the street is that sooner than later, we may see her make her way into WWE. And so it'll be interesting to see that. Her time is pretty much done at Stardom. And it's believed that she'll be in WWE by November, though some say she could be showing up soon. So it'll be interesting to see when and how Kyrie makes her way into returning into WWE. Thoughts on that said?
So I know her Twitter account said showing up soon, but how cool would it be if you can get like some serious long-term storytelling and Kyrie is the one to nerf Nia Jax?
Ah.
What if Kyrie was the one to come back? 'Cause a lot of people were upset about Nia hurting Kyrie in the ring during the pandemic era, stuff like that. What if Kyrie's the one to come back and go toe to toe with Nia Jackson, ends up getting her comeuppance from years ago? I think that would be a cool way to announce her. You can also do a callback to Kabuki Warriors on SmackDown, maybe aligning with Asuka against Damage Control. But I'm in this space where I feel like the Raw brand could use so much more star power with so many people out. I think she fits there perfectly.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where she ends up going, and even more interesting to see Kyrie in a main roster space with Triple H as head of creative.
That part, because she was a big NXT original. Big one.
Big, and I mean, former winner of the Mae Young Classic, former women's champion. You know, I think this could be a really special thing. There's some cool comments in here. Bobby says he'd like to see Asuka and Kyrie against Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. That could be a fun tag match. I'm not sure if I want to see Kyrie in a tag situation just yet. I mean, obviously,
WrestleMania features Io, Kyrie, and Asuka in a triple threat.
I think we would all lose our stuff. I think we'd lose it all. Like, it would be crazy. Well, I just kind of jumped the gun because one of the things that's happening tonight, we talked about Title Tuesday next week for AEW, but AEW's really been on a big run as of late. You know, you go back to the end of August, they had All In. You know, many are debating how many people were there. I think there's nobody debating that it was their largest house and their largest audience ever. Rolled into All In, rolled into Wrestle Dream, you know, released CM Punk, did the whole thing in New York, and now they are celebrating 4 years of Dynamite tonight. Now, technically, Monday was the official 4-year anniversary date, but, you know, tonight's going to be a special night. 4 years of Dynamite, highlighted by this international championship match with Rey Fenix versus Nick Jackson. And then we'll also see this guy, the Rated R superstar, Adam Copeland, FKA Edge, who will be making his first official comments in an AEW ring tonight. Here's the question for everybody, to the chat, and of course, all of you who are listening, and for you, said, what are your thoughts on 4 years of Dynamite? And I guess the question is, win, lose, or draw, do you think that AEW Dynamite has improved the wrestling industry? Is that a win, lose, or draw with its presence?
Oh, with Adam's presence?
No. Has Dynamite in the last 4 years?
The show itself. Oh, yeah, the show itself, absolutely. I think, for me personally, I like the show in the earlier stages a lot more.
Okay.
Just it was fresh, it was different, but it's kind of reached a level to where they know what they're doing and they're staying afloat. They have their formula, so to speak. So I would say it's improved the wrestling space a lot, because we know the other company's not the only game in town, and other superstars who are cast away can be featured in a big way here. At least even in interim space, there's a spot for them in AEW. I think Dynamite is great. I feel like where AEW could have always improved is the shows outside of Dynamite. Dynamite's always been fine.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I don't want to say I've seen everything I need that I could see in Dynamite, because they still have so many good ideas. But I just remember, like, the first time we had the best friends match, and then Trent's mom pulled up, Sue pulled up, stuff like that was cool. Yeah. Very organic, very wholesome moments that they used to do all the time. But I feel like they've definitely improved the wrestling space as a whole. I'm glad that they've reached 4 years. Just like not a small accomplishment at all.
Very, very, and let's also think about this too, which, they've really done something that I think is historic. Here it is. They launched a company in October of 2019, and within 6 months' time, they were locked into a global pandemic. And, the larger company, WWE, was trying to figure it out. How much more would an AEW end up having to figure it out? I don't know if Ron is in the chat, but I remember very clearly that I think he had tickets to what was supposed to be that first Blood and Guts, which was supposed to happen right around that time where this thing happened, and they had to kind of redo everything, and talk about pivoting. They had to pivot, and what they were able to do with AEW Dynamite, most may not know, but they ended up taping about 5 or 6 weeks of television here in Atlanta, at the Nightmare Factory. I guess I can say that. I just said it. At the Nightmare Factory, to a closed set, just to be able to continue to fulfill their TV obligations and continue to present shows. And then they were fortunate enough to have Daly's Place available to them because of, their owner owning the Jaguars. They had that place, and that really became the home of Dynamite for a solid year and change. And what they were able to do in a pandemic space, you know, it's so admirable. It really, really is, for a company that young. Because I say this respectfully. We know that there were a lot of sporting companies and the like that didn't survive the pandemic. You know, um, think about how the NWA was impacted by the pandemic. They were never the same. They've made a comeback, but they still haven't seen the kind of momentum that they saw going into the pandemic. Ring of Honor was so severely injured that they ended up having to close their doors, and eventually were, purchased by, ironically, AEW. So not every wrestling entity was able to weather the storm of the pandemic. They managed to do it with their flagship show, and then added, which Dark, in fairness to Dark did exist before the pandemic. But what they used Dark then to do was to create opportunities for independent wrestlers who were not getting a check during that time because they didn't have a place to wrestle. It was really, really, for all of the criticism that Tony Khan and AEW gets, what they have done in the last 4 years is nothing short of extraordinary. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. And I know some people, have their thoughts about whatever, but WCW did not pack out a stadium show. They never did. And so we've got to consider that, for as hot as WCW was, they didn't do that. So it says a lot about what AEW has managed to do. And again, to be able to attract people like Adam Copeland, Christian Cage. Think about the people who have come through AEW: Sting, and have had really good runs. Chris Jericho, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson. We have to mention CM Punk. Like, they've created some great moments for pro wrestling. And for those who lived through the Attitude Era or have heard about the Attitude Era, one thing has proven true. People seem to work best when there is, and I put it in air quotes, competition. And I think for WWE, for there being another place for wrestlers to go, it gave them, it kind of lit a fire and said, hey, okay, there are crowds that are tuning into other things. Okay, who are we and what is it that we want to do? So kudos to AEW. Congratulations to them. Again, when there are more places that are open, lots of people get an opportunity to work and eat. And a lot of people had a chance to be employed or get a check from AEW and get nationwide exposure through that television product of AEW Dynamite. So congratulations. Everybody wins. And I love it. And I love this thought here that Dylan says, regardless of your personal feeling toward AEW, AEW has been a game changer. They have been. which I think is great. Dylan's got a question for everybody. Do you really think Edge should be wrestling in AEW past 18 months? Edge versus Christian and maybe a tag title run. That's all. Maybe a match with Omega. But apart from that, so it's a great question. How much should Adam Copeland do in AEW? What are your thoughts on that?
18 months. So that's a very brief run, year and 6 months.
It is a brief run. Mm-hmm.
I feel like Adam wants more than that.
Yeah.
I know he always alludes to he didn't know how much time he had left. He felt like he was on borrowed time. This run's going to end soon because of his body and his age. But I think this is something that kind of re-energizes him. So I think he wants to go, I'd say three years. I think that's what he wants to do. I don't know what we can get in that time frame.
Yeah.
But I think what's re-energizing him is what he alluded to at the press scrum is like he has these ideas he wants to utilize. Yeah. So helping get over other talent, but for him, it's just like dream matches, things that he probably wanted to do in WWE. Because people he probably wanted to work with in WWE, that the opportunity wasn't there. Mm-hmm. But now he goes here, and you have this like multiverse of companies. He's already spitfiring, thinking like, oh, I can go to the Tokyo Dome. I can do this. I can do that. Right. There's people that that are on the same path as him from the past 25 years that he's probably never met. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking like minimum 3 years. And I'm not even thinking about title runs. I'm just thinking about like first time evers.
Right. Yeah, I do think we need to see some first time ever matches. I think Edge and Omega is obviously one that would be kind of a game changer. I'm trying to think of a few others that would be first time evers if they're able to, continue their relationship with New Japan. Obviously, Edge and Kota. I'd love to see Edge and Adam Copeland. I'm sorry. We've called him Edge for 25 years. Adam Copeland and Konosuke Takeshita, which I think would be crazy. I almost want Ospreay, but I think the Ospreay match could be too tough on him because Ospreay is going to go hard. So I don't know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat about some possibilities. This is an interesting one. Edge and Eddie Kingston. That'd be interesting. I hadn't wrapped my brain around that one yet, but
has Edge ever faced Samoa Joe?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a great question. Yeah, it is going to be hard calling him Adam Copeland. As hard as it was for us to call Daniel Bryan Brian Danielson.
It's like such a weird twist to say that, because it's literally the same thing.
It is the same thing. Poor JR, because JR has a hard that Daniel Bryan will still slip out. So so we'll see what happens. But Adam Copeland on the 4th anniversary of Dynamite tonight, and so we've got time for I guess one more story, which for that we'll go back to Monday night for a interesting return for a certain, former NXT champion, former North American champion who made his way back to Monday Night Raw. Would you like to tell the people about that one?
Yeah, if you didn't catch Monday Night Raw in the Intercontinental title match between Gunther and Tommaso Ciampa, who absolutely tore the house down. So
totally did.
I don't know if somebody was in the earpieces like, hey, Monday Night Football is trash, put on a banger, go as hard as you guys can. But we saw a really good match. And then Gunther, what I love about Gunther, and I think this sentiment is shared with many people, is that he's not a finisher guy.
Right.
It's like whatever the vibes are at the moment, that's how we're finishing the match. And it's going to look brutal every single time. Mm-hmm. I love that about him because it adds a layer of mystery to what you're watching.
Yes.
We don't know how he's going to finish the match. It might be a powerbomb. I might choke you out. I might just chop you.
Right.
Like it's insane.
Yeah.
But Gunther retained, still in the longest reigning Intercontinental title reign. And then Imperium hits the ring and they attack Tommaso Ciampa after the bell. The new remix to Rebel Heart hits, and we finally see where Johnny Gargano has been. Johnny Gargano hits the ring, and he takes out Imperium. And for whatever reason, because we know we have until that 8:05 if you're in Pacific time, right when they were going to meet in the middle, cameras cut. Now,
unbelievable.
There's two ways you can look at this. Because the first way I looked at it, I was like, wow, somebody messed up. But I thought maybe maybe they're just trying to get the social media engagement. Maybe they wanted you to tune into social media to watch the full clip. Yeah. But we didn't go overtime there. They hit a hard cut and went to Chucky, and I'm sure it pissed America off because we didn't get to see the complete DIY reunion. But if you're under a rock, that's what you missed. We have a full-fledged DIY reunion on main roster. And this is a tag team, if you're familiar with their work in NXT before they became single stars, a lot of classics. I expect them to absolutely swim on the main roster in the tag division. I hope they swim for a long time so the main roster audience can get to know these characters, and then they can go their separate ways and be the stars that Triple H knows that he created in NXT.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because when I see them, it's funny, FTR immediately comes to mind, and I just think about the classics that those two teams had, aka the Revival. And if this does mean a proverbial revival in tag team wrestling in WWE, I am all the way here for it, because the wars that were happening for the NXT tag titles were just so special. And this is one of those cases where, yes, they're great apart, but I think they're still better together. And I think for what they can do in this crazy house of a main roster, I think they have a chance to stand out and to do some things that I think would be absolutely special. So it's great. It is great to see the amazing Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa back together again. Just,
Yeah, these are two guys. I just want to see them win.
Yeah.
In this run for WWE on main roster, they help NXT go to new heights. I want to see both of these guys win, like every turn. And I mean, think about how cool it is to Triple H and Creative Control, because like there's rumors that they've had AOP sign the contracts just hanging back there for a while. Like you can really call up so many throwbacks and classics from years ago on main that people get to relive again. Like, it's great stuff.
It'd be absolutely amazing. So before we get out of here, I want to remind you that if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you see a QR code. And no, unfortunately, it is not for a Bray Wyatt vignette. Instead, if you scan that, you will see some of the brand new merch from WWT, Women's Wrestling Talk. And we've actually had some redesigns on our merch. And I got to tell you, the merch is fire. So you absolutely want to scan that code and check out the merch that we have. And you can pick up some of the really cool merch that is going on for Women's Wrestling Talk. With that said, we've got to get out of here. Said, how can they reach you, sir?
You just actually gave me a great idea with that QR code. We should absolutely have TK route it to the Booniverse. If you haven't checked out Booney's videos on IG, go check that out. If you're familiar with like Mad TV and the comedy, that would be awesome. If this QR code just one day out of the blue took you into that world, it would be dope. Just saying, just throw nothing.
Thank you,
but
Jeffrey.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you guys for joining us in the chat. You can find me on Twitter at says, CEW_SAYS. On the gram at Said Is The Answer, and coincidentally on Threads as well whenever I decide to do a thread. Check out my website, CedricDWelton.com, where you can see all my journalism work outside of the wrestling body of stuff. And check out 2 articles that dropped on Monday, one on DailyDDT.com. That is recapping the best 3 moments of WWE No Mercy, as well as looking at the 2 women's matches specifically on the WWTalkPod.com site. So check those out.
Absolutely love it. Of course, you can find me at Bonnerfied across all the spaces. You can check out my commentary work on IWE and Southern Honor Wrestling, both on IWTV, Battle Slam on Fight TV, and with the Nightmare Factory on YouTube. Speaking of the Nightmare Factory, you guys are going to get a spoiler alert. So here we go. Last night, had the opportunity to do some work with the Nightmare Factory for their Student Showcase 11. That commentary will be coming out at some point. I'm not exactly sure when they'll drop that, but they will. But there is a name that I want you to be on the lookout for. Her name is Isis Reed. Isis Reed, Reade is her last name. Last night, they had the first ever women's main event in Student Showcase history. And the idea of these Student Showcases, by the way, is the Nightmare Factory. They have a 12-week training camp for new and prospective wrestlers to go through. So sometimes wrestlers who have been wrestling for a while hop in. Other times they are brand new, never wrestled before, and they get a chance to go through this 12-week training. And for many, it's their first match in front of an audience, and it's really, really special. So I'm honored to get to do commentary for that. But last night we called a match for a young lady named Isis Reed. Let me tell you something. When I see special, I recognize special. This girl is special. 15 years old. And she hung in there with a wrestler by the name of Angelica Risk, who recently battled Athena on Ring of Honor. This is special. Just trust me when I tell you, when this drops, you will want to see it. I'll be talking about it. I probably need to get TK to do an interview with Isis Reed because this girl is the real deal. So we'll be talking more about that when that gets ready to drop. So I had to make sure I spent some time. I started to show you guys a picture. I'm like, I won't do that. Maybe I'll do that another time. But Isis Reed doing some things. And speaking of Southern Honor, we've got our big 5-year anniversary show this Friday night. Diamond Dallas Page will be there. It's going to be a big, big night. We've got an NWA Women's World Title match happening there, an IWTV World Title match. Like, it's going to be crazy. So if you guys can get to the Atlanta area, you will want to check it out. If you can't, you don't want to miss it on IWTV. In the meantime, WW Talk Pod is where you can find us on the socials for all things women's wrestling talk. Listen, our social media is popping. You got to hop on there. TikTok, Instagram. I was thinking too many things. TikTok, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever you call it. We are in all of those spaces. You want to check it out. Of course, great articles and interviews on www.talkpod.com. And I do mean a lot of them. And some really, really great people are there. So you want to check that out. Of course, you can check out WWT Live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Thank you to everyone in the chat, because there are so many of you guys rocking with us. Bobby and Jeffrey, of course, Boza, Eric, we see you. Dylan, always rocking with us. Like, you guys are just absolutely amazing, and it's wonderful to have this great conversation with you. With that said, we're out of here. We will see you back here on Friday for another edition of WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.